All right. Good morning. Nice to meet you. I guess officially, right? Um, this is uh, this is a call that we do typically every Thursday, and we do different topics. And um, sometimes we'll have 15, 20 people. Sometimes we'll have three or four. It just depends. We do record it so that if somebody's not able to make it to the call, they're able to come back and rewatch these pieces. Um, and so we're going to go ahead and just kind of dive in. Now, Mon is my cyberbacker. And he is operates out of the Philippines, and he helps me with all of my back end stuff. He's amazing. He is actually they just had or they're experiencing a typhoon in his world, so he's actually going to be here for part of the call, letting people in, and then he's going to step out and deal with that. So there's going to be a couple of things that we might talk about that I'm going to make a reference to. We'll get that to you later. So just be aware that that's why. Normally we would just put it in the chat box, but he and I've got to put some things together to tie it all in. So, all right. And I always believe in starting on time and ending on time. So we're going to go ahead and dive in. So, and then feel free to use the chat box. So, or unmute yourself and ask any questions. This is typically very interactive. So, today we're going to be looking at goals, priorities, and strategies. We typically at Keller Williams, we talk about that's your one-page business plan. So once we put together like all of our numbers and that type of thing for a business plan, and that's something that for anybody that's coming back and listening to this call, you probably have it. If you don't, that is something that we're working on right now. So we want to take all of those numbers that we're going to use for a business plan and create it and bring it into one page. Because for what happens is, for most of us, a business plan can be anywhere from typically the one that we use at MAPS is about 4 pages. But by the time you put all the org chart with it and all of this, I mean, multiple pages, we need all of that. And yet, if we're not careful, that goes onto a shelf and we never look at it. There's no relationship with it, right? And so the GPS actually helps us have a relationship with our goals. And then, so that's kind of what we're going to be looking at. How do we put that together, and how does that tell us or help us determine what do we need to do by the month and by the week that takes us to that goal? So that's what we're going to be looking at today. We're also going to be, because we are working on reading through the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So we're going to actually be looking at the emotional bank account. We're going to start there, and then we'll wrap up and we'll finish with those goals, priorities, and strategies. So that's what today looks like. And then I'm going to pull this down so that I have that. Okay. And I do have the chat box up, so if there's questions or anything. So we're going to start here with taking an inventory of where we are right now for those 7 habits of highly effective people. So we're going to take a look back. I just want you to think about the road that you've traveled so far, right? The 7 habits are based on a process called the inside out approach. So the first 3 habits concentrate on the inside portion of this process. So in other words, we've been thinking only about ourselves up to this point, right? It kind of feels good to do that sometimes, because so often it's about everybody else. We've been building and improving relationships with ourselves, with our own character. Habits 1, 2, and 3 have increased our self-respect, self-discipline. It's led to a private victory of independence. Instead of being victimized and immobile, focusing on the weaknesses of other people, circumstances that you might believe that you're responsible for circumstances that you believe are responsible for your current situation. Instead, we are choosing to consciously choose to focus on our highest priorities and values, envisioning how we can best lead our life around those priorities, and then formulating a plan to execute on those priorities. So simply put, self-mastery is the foundation of good relationships with others. You can't be successful with other people if you haven't paid the price of success with yourself, right? So that's a little bit of a paradigm shift. After experiencing your private victory, habits 4, 5, and 6 will lead you to a public victory of interdependence, where you will be capable of building rich, enduring, highly productive relationships with other people. So now it's time to concentrate on the out of inside out. So we're going to do that by actually starting with something that's called an emotional bank account. So before we move to habits 4, 5, and 6, this is just a really powerful metaphor that effectively describes relationships. And this material is from Stephen Covey, the personal workbook, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People personal workbook. You don't need that. I just, in case you wanted to go back through that. So the emotional bank account is a metaphor that describes the amount of trust that you build in a relationship. Much like a financial bank account, deposits are made and withdrawals are taken from that emotional bank account. So when you do something positive for another person, it can be a major deposit to that person. Deposits build that reserve of goodwill and trust. It's the reason why, like our best friend, we've built up a lot of trust with. They can tell us things that nobody else could, and we're not offended by it, right? That's because we've built up that reserve of goodwill and trust. On the other hand, when you do something negative toward another person, you make a withdrawal. And when withdrawals exceed deposits, the account is overdrawn and that level of trust deteriorates. I think of this as relations with teenagers. So, when kids are little, we make lots of deposits. We don't really make that many withdrawals, and right, they love being around us and everything. And then teenage happens and you got hormones and just right. And if we're not careful, that we start making withdrawals unintentionally because they say something that he uses the example in the book, I'm frustrated about school. And then we go to, if we're not careful, what do you mean you're frustrated with school? It's, blah, you have it so good, because we're looking at it from our perspective, and that trust deteriorates, right? So with your relationships, it's vital that you make continual deposits in order to sustain a high level of trust. So these are some common emotional deposits and withdrawals. So displaying kindness and courtesy, keeping promises, clear expectations, loyalty to the absent, apologizing. I always look at keeping promises as, and I'm sure that, that you and people that would listen to this, sometimes we make too many promises. So are we, because we're being nice or right. And so sometimes I think it's better for us to make the deposit to say, I'd love to do that. And that's really not, I'm not going to be able to do that. Right. And then you're not setting yourself up for failure, where you have to come back in and apologize. And that's going to take that withdrawal. So withdrawals, displaying unkindness and discourtesy, breaking promises, unclear expectations, showing disloyalty or duplicity, having pride, conceit, or arrogance. And so the loyalty to the absent, I always just want to come back to this. And he talks about this. Of course, I've been guilty of this. I'm sure we all have. Are we speaking negatively about somebody in someone else's presence? We may not think about it in the moment because knee-jerk reaction or something to that effect, but are we, and yet if we talk about somebody that's not there with somebody else, that person's now going to know or think that you are going to do that when they're not there. We don't realize that how that impacts us in that. So, and for many of us on this call, we're building businesses, right? We're going to, so are you being cognizant of if your admin's not in the room? Now, I'm not talking about a discussion around what people are doing well and what are their opportunities. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about those little negative comments that we just, oh gosh, they're always late. Right. Those little things we think are little, and yet that's actually making a withdrawal from the person that you're talking to. Because now even though it may not mentally be thinking it, that the trust has eroded some, because they're thinking, wow, when I'm out of the room, what do they say about me? So just wanted to, so these are some deposits and withdrawals. So we want to look at this emotional bank account and we want to start looking at how do we make deposits. So there are two keys to making deposits. They need to be frequent, they need to be consistent. So just as the body needs food frequently and consistently to stay healthy, relationships need the same nourishment as well. So the closer the relationship, the more frequent and consistent the deposits need to be. And then our key two, deposits do not occur until the recipient considers it a deposit. So again, I'll go back to teenagers. We might be thinking we're being nice, or maybe maybe it's that client or whoever kind of comes to mind, but we might think we're being nice or we're doing this, we're going out of our way for them. Unless the recipient considers it a deposit, it's not really a deposit. We simply don't know what constitutes a deposit until we actually understand the other person. So for some, receiving feedback and comments on things they've done is a deposit. For others, it's a withdrawal. I always think about my older brother. It was interesting, and the love language assessment helped him and his wife. He would be like, oh, I'm going to be super sweet, and I'm going to bring her flowers. And he'd go, roses or whatever. And she would get him and be like, thanks. And he really could not understand why she wasn't having a better reaction, or why she was almost annoyed when he got her roses. Her love language was quality time. So she felt like, you're ignoring me, you can throw me a little roses, and that right now his love language, interesting enough, was gifts. So he's thinking he's doing this great thing, I'm making this deposit, and for her it's a withdrawal. So that's where the deposit does not occur until the recipient considers it a deposit. Also, if your motives for making the deposit are not sincere, others are going to feel manipulated. So it's not about doing or saying things that look positive. Your intentions can be good, and yet only the person you're interacting with can decide whether your gesture is a deposit or withdrawal. So we're going to actually evaluate your emotional bank account. So we're going to take some time. We're going to examine your balance with a person in your world. You're actually going to choose two, and we're going to evaluate the deposits and withdrawals that you've made. You're going to mark the deposits with a plus sign and withdrawals with a negative. And for each withdrawal, you're going to record changes that you can make in the future to build deposits or repair trust. So it looks like this. So pick a name of two people, write it down, put it at the top of your page. People that, important people to you. And we're just going to take like 2 minutes and do this really quickly. So just their name. And then I want you to think about your relationship. The last conversation, the last time you were with you, did you show kindness and courtesy? Are you keeping your promises, honoring expectations, showing loyalty when he's absent, apologizing when needed? Put a positive or negative. And beside those, write down what are some of the changes you could make to build that deposit or repair that trust. All right. So, what are you discovering? I'd love for you to just throw something in that chat box or unmute yourself. When we look at this emotional bank account, I mean, it could even be just something of like, I hadn't really thought about this before, or it's a good exercise. Anything. Talk to me.
I would say how easy it is to say something and not stand by it, keeping a promise, if it makes sense what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's
Honoring the expectations, in other words. So.
yes, yeah, yeah. I think it's one of the easiest things to do, right? Even to the I'll be there by 4.
Yeah.
Right. And then we're there at 4:15 and we go, well, it's not that big a deal. We didn't need it. Well, it could be, it is, it's that small erosion of trust where, and the interesting thing is if we said it, because I think we also have to give ourselves some grace, depending on what it is, then to go, okay, let me communicate that to them before it's 4:15. So like, hey, I did realize I'm running late. I'm not gonna, it will be here in that way. So absolutely, I think it's very easy to do that in the big and small things. And then Angie, so never thought about understanding others' expectations and honoring those expectations. Yeah. I always go back to, and it doesn't matter your religion, but it's in the Bible, right? That do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I think though we have to remember from their perspective, right? So I know like my love language is acts of service. If you, I don't know, if you give me a gift, I'm going to appreciate the gift. Right. If you, and I might even feel awkward if you do something for me, like that's, not, and I say not even have to be special. I don't know, like my favorite roommate. I had I hate changing light bulbs. So the outside of my light, like that, it was never worked, right? The bulb would blow and never work. And he noticed it, didn't say anything, and changed the light bulb. You would have thought that he gave me, I was like, oh my God, that's the best thing ever. I could have done it. It would have taken me 2 minutes, right? So whatever that is. So are you talking in the way they would want to? So yeah, Anya, those deposits are important to be aware of. Spending a lot of time thinking about them in my life day to day. So great to be aware of them. Absolutely. And I want you to think of it this way too. And it talks about this in the book. This is not a scorecard. It's only a method to help you gain an awareness of your deposits and withdrawals. Because again, if we're not careful, pretty much everything we can do, we might turn it into, oh my God, I'm bad, right? And it's not about that. It's just, okay, now I have some awareness. Where do I have some, what can I do to continue moving forward? So this week, you might decide to keep what we call an emotional bank account log. I'm going to share with you guys a picture of this, but basically, right, think about those actions you just wrote down. You're going to write, this week, keeping an eye with that person, you're going to say, okay, what's the action? Did I make it a positive withdrawal? On a scale of -10 to +10, you're going to mark where you think you fall in terms of an emotional bank account balance with this person. And then you're going to describe 3 things you think this person would consider deposits and determine what you when you could make them make these deposits. And then describe 3 things that you think this person would consider a withdrawal. So I'm going to show you this, and yet this is one of those things that I was telling you that we will get. I will get the actual form for you. Let me share. So you could screenshot this for now. It's going to just take a second. You can screenshot this. And yet, if you want to, and yet we are going to send this to you in a better form. But for today, if you wanted to just screenshot it, you just, again, it's just really about paying attention or being aware of that this week. That's it. And really just, focusing on 2. The cool part when we focus on 2, it's going to show up everywhere, right? Because so often, doing everything is like, how much money do you want to make? Well, I want to make as much as possible. So we have no direction to go. By identifying 2, it is going to pour over to those other people. So you don't have to go, oh, I need to make a list of just 2, and it'll expand on its own. So, okay, so that's what this piece looks like. And I will get you this in more of a workbook piece. Okay, so now we're going to move into, so that was our section of the 7 habits of highly effective people. Next week, we're going to focus on habit 4. And Sylvia, it's been really fun reading this book with you guys, and you guys like shooting me messages around this. And then Sylvia has been, she noticed, right? Like, gosh, habit 4 is pretty cool when we look at that think win-win, because we talk about that a lot at Keller Williams, right? Win-win or no deal. And yet we forget that if we're not careful, there is win-win, win-lose, lose-win, lose-lose, win-win-win, right? And are we paying attention to, are we having enough dialogue so that it's a win-win? And if we can't get there going, it's okay to be a no deal. Versus, especially think about some of the clients that we are dealing with. Are we setting it up for a win-win? Because the moment it becomes a lose-win, it's no longer good for you, right? Even if you have to walk away. And the same thing, we don't want it to be a lose for them. So that's a really powerful piece. So we're going to look at that more in detail next week. So GPS, again, that stands for goals, priorities, strategies. You may have also know it as something that's called 135. We used to call it 135 a long time ago. And you will hear it being referenced to as your 1-page business plan. Okay. So all these things mean the same thing. Now, this is the reason that we want to look at this is people are really good at setting goals, and yet they aren't good at having a relationship with those goals. As a result, people spend their days responding to their inbox, attending meetings, looking up at the end of the day, being busy, and not getting anything done. And maybe that's harsh to say not getting anything done, but maybe not getting the priorities done, not getting the things that are going to move you forward done, right? We've all probably been there, right? You run around like a busy, crazy person. You get home, it's like, wow, it's 8:00, and you can't really say what you did, right? Well, the purpose of the GPS is to help us have a relationship with our goal. And so the tools that we have inside of Keller Williams, being the GPS and the 411, and these are pivotal. And we believe there's an opportunity to take our understanding and adoption of these tools to a higher level. Most of us, at some point have decided, oh gosh, yeah, the GPS sounds cool, or the 411 sounds cool. And we do it and we stop doing it because it's a new tool. So there's going to be some fascination with it. There's going to be some frustration. We get busy and we go back, like we talked about last week, we go back to quadrant 1, which is that procrastinator, right? Where we put everything off. We stop living in quadrant 2, which is the prioritizing. And so we quit planning, and then we run around like a crazy person. We have anxiety, and we don't know why we have anxiety and all this, right? So the GPS is that quadrant 2, which is the prioritizer. Okay. So sometimes, right, what is the difference of all of these systems? Because we have lots of these things, right? So, what's the difference between, someday goals, 5-year, 1-year, GPS, 411, the planner, what's my 80% task? It's all of these. So this page lays it all out. So it all starts with going all the way out to someday goals, We talk about right in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, we talk about, or the book talks about, like, if you're going through the jungle and you've got people that are just cutting down the trees, you're going through, you want somebody up high above looking at where you're going to make sure that you're cutting the leaves down to the right place. Well, we're not sure about where we want to go someday, and it doesn't, and I think sometimes we also get stuck on this of going, we have to know exactly. No. We just got to pick a direction and start marching in that direction. That's going to help us know, okay, well, based on that, where do I need to be in 5 years? Okay, based on that, where do I need to be in 1 year? So a great example of this that's simple, when I'm 70 plus, I want to be able to run half marathons. Well, a year and a half ago, I couldn't run a mile. So got me thinking about, well, if that's my someday goal, well, where do I got to be in 5 years? Where do I got to be this year? What do I got to be today? So that's how that gets clarity around this. So once you have some clarity on your 5 year, again, 5 year, 1 year. Now, there goes the puppies. You're going to have to search for that someday goal. It doesn't just happen like an epiphany, right? So you're just going to and that's some of the things that we're doing in coaching, right? What does that look like? Where do we want to be? Then we back that up to 5 years. And sometimes people still struggle with 5 years. I know that's very much something I've realized that it's harder to do. So if he does, now we've got to exercise that muscle. Then we're going to look at our 1 year. Now, most of us, we have our business plan put together right now. That's what we're going to be talking about really when we look today at your 1 year. You also might have a GPS for your 1 year physical goal, if they're right. So we're going to talk about what this looks like. The GPS is necessary when you have a big goal. When the goal is big, it's complex, meaning you have different moving parts. If it requires multiple people, you do a GPS. So write this down if you're taking notes. If it's a big goal, multiple parts, and it requires multiple people, that's when you know you need to do a GPS. So if you're a solo agent, you could actually skip the GPS, and yet it is helpful. And especially if you have a team, or if you have multiple people involved. Okay. So the GPS brings clarity to the order of priority and accountability, because it will show you who owns each item. And then once you have a good GPS, the purpose is to help each person in your organization, or each person that has something to do with this. It's going to help them determine what goes on their 411, which stands for 4 weeks, 1 month, and 1 year, which we're going to talk about on our next call, which, by the way, is not next week because we're going to be in fall masterminds. It'll be the week of Thanksgiving. We're going to do a call on probably Monday or Tuesday. I'll get that to you guys. And that's where we're going to look at that piece. So the GPS is the higher level. This is our team. This is our department. This is where we're going, right? And then we go, this is who owns each piece. The 411 says, this is what I own for the year. And based on that, what I need to focus on this month to be on track for my year. What do I need to focus on my week that drives my month, that drives my year? So once we have clarity on the 20% priorities for the week, that's where we then time block. So if I looked at your planner, first off, would you have one? And then if I looked at your time blocks, would I see your 20% priority items, or would I see the 80% stuff and you're trying to squeeze in the 20% stuff, right? So we start with the GPS, and then we break the entire GPS that 1 year to the 411. So this is what the GPS looks like. So we're going to review this template. And again, I know that some of you guys, this is an old hat, and I'm asking you to kind of put away what you think you know about it and kind of come at it with fresh eyes. So with the goals, priority, strategies, it starts out by identifying your one thing for the year. Now, this is the interesting thing. I think we can all acknowledge that we have more than one thing, right? Like, I think sometimes we go, what there? We all have more than one thing. And yet when we are looking at the goal, we want to be realizing this is my one thing, say in business, right? When you look at that goal, you want to make sure that it's a SMART goal, right? And is it directional? Is it that North Star? Is it something so simple that every person in the organization could rattle off in the hallway? So it could be net $1 million, increase revenue by 10%. Is it specific, measurable, on purpose? Everyone in your organization can see and understand what am I doing right now? Is that supporting the organization to increase profit, drive revenue, right? Get whatever that goal is. Now let's take those of you that are a single agent. You are more likely to fall into that number one lie that everything matters equally. So let's ensure we know our goal and what those top levers are, the top priorities, so that they can, we know what they need to be in our 411 and we can time block and order priority. Okay. So now we have the goal and then we look at the priorities. These are the major priorities. This isn't everything. This is the 20% initiatives that will deliver 80% of the impact. So you're going to make the list and then you're going to make sure that this list is in order of priority. So my one thing for the year is, what's that priority? Is that the most important priority? So these are some of the things that I want you to pay attention to when you're creating your GPS. And in a minute, I'm going to show you an example of a GPS for a real estate agent. Pay attention to the order of these questions. So when you establish your one big goal, one of the things you can do is fast forward to December 2021. How will you know if you are successful? Okay, I've done this. If it's not specific, ask, how will you know if you're successful? If it's not measurable, what specifically has to happen to achieve that? And then think, can you simplify it any further so people can easily remember it? Okay. Then you want to identify the priorities that would make achieving your goal easier or unnecessary. Can any be combined into a higher level priority? If it's not specific, ask, how will you know if you're successful? If it's not measurable, what specifically has to happen to achieve that? And then think, who owns that and when does it have to be accomplished by? So for instance, we're going to be talking, a lot of us are dealing with our database. And we're talking about having our entire 36 touch in place, like everything that we're going to do next year in place by the end of December. Well, if that was on a GPS, right, it would have a date by, and it would be a by who, right? That's kind of an example. And then rank your priorities in order of priority. So when you create these priorities, you want to start asking yourself, if I could only accomplish one, what's the one thing that would make achieving my goal easier or unnecessary? Should I earn the right to accomplish a second thing? Which would it be? Should I earn the right to accomplish what would be a third and then a fourth, right? And you're going to re-rank your priorities so they are in order of priority. What this helps us do is when we have a goal, we want to do everything today. Is that even feasible, right? If I set a goal, like I have a goal to run 100 miles in June. If I would have said I wanted to run 100 miles in 30 hours today or a year and a half ago, I can't do enough training to make that happen. So you go, okay, so what's first? What's second? What's third, right? All right, so those are some questions, and we are going to provide those questions to you as well. You must so think of these as lining your dominoes up, right, from the one thing. That way you stop thinking your distractions are priorities. So it's not that these are the only things happening in your organization, yet the thing is these allow you to bring clarity, alignment, and accountability. And the clarity is being clear on what matters most. So again, Jeff Woods created and shared this tool on how to create your GPS, and it's going to be in your the open source, and so you will have this this information. All right, so you hear me asking all the time, have you earned the right to do X? I want to make sure that we're clear on what it means when we say earning the right. So this is straight from Gary Keller. When he's looking at everything on his plate, I got to do all of these things for all of these different businesses. He doesn't look like it, everything on his plate. What he looks at it as, these are dominoes, and how do we line them up? He understands that if we were working on knocking dominoes down, it would be ridiculous to go to the fourth domino and flick it, because 1, 2, and 3 would still be standing. Gary understands in his bones that until his number one priority is done, everything else is a distraction. So think about lead generation in our business, right? If that's our number one, until that's done, everything else is a distraction. Well, I want to go show that buyer. Let me finish my lead generation. Let me finish, right? Because everything else is a distraction. So let's look at how this actually works. So when we think about earning the right or doing that one thing in a vacuum, this is how it would work. We wouldn't do anything else until that one thing is done. And yet, let's be realistic. Is that real life? No, right? So when we talk about earning the right, is do we have clarity on what the lead domino is? And are we doing our share to knock that domino down? Now, whether it falls down that day, we don't know, because we do have interdependency. No one succeeds alone. And yet, are you at least doing everything you can, moving the ball right now, right? Before you earn the right to do anything else. So that's what we mean by that. Is it the lead domino, right? And again, if you have questions, put it in the chat box, or unmute yourself. I can stop, I can explain, whatever, however we can make the best use of our time today. So now let's go back to that goal. The purpose of a goal is to be appropriate in the moment, because we talk about the relationship. So if I have a goal, the only reason that matters is so that I can be appropriate in the moment. So if I have a goal to run 100 miles in June, I got to do something. What do I have to do today to be appropriate in the moment? If it's a rest day, because see, like, we don't have, many of us work 7 days a week because we think that's, no. What's the plan? If I'm planning on running a 100-mile marathon, there are rest days built in. Me resting today is appropriate for my goal in the moment, right? And then there's other days that me running at this pace is appropriate. So think of that same thing in your business. You need to have days where it is appropriate to rest. You need to have days that it's appropriate to lead generate. You need to have days that, does that make sense when we look at being appropriate for the moment? Thank you. Okay. So to know where we want to be, what do we need to do right now? So your goal we want is to be specific, measurable, and simple if possible. If it can't be specific and measurable, it must be directional so that people can understand what they can do right now to be appropriate. So now once we have that goal, we earn the right to focus on the priorities. Now, this is the other thing. There is no point in talking about the priorities until you have the goal. Until you know where you're going, we can't talk priorities because there's about 1,000 things. Until you know what success looks like, you actually don't know a priority from a distraction. That's what, like, the day before a vacation, you realize how all the distractions like disappear, and it's only because you're very clear on the goal. Getting out of town, you leave me alone, whatever that is, right? That's what happens when we know the goal. Otherwise, we don't know a priority from a distraction. Because let's say that this is our goal and we just came back from a camp or we just went to a training and somebody does, oh my gosh, they have a concierge in their business. And we start going, I want a concierge in my business. But your business doesn't need it yet. That's not a priority yet. But because we're not clear on the goal, we get distracted, right? So we make a list of all the priorities when we start creating our GPS. We have our goal. We're going to make a list of all the priorities of what we could do. Then we're going to rank them into the ones that we should do, that we're committed to doing. And then we rank them in order of priority. And then we rank them. And then once that's written, Then we go, okay, how do we make this accountable, right? So I'm about to show you an example of a GPS for a real estate agent. The GPS shows where we're going over the course of a year. Otherwise, how would we know what to do this week, right? And that's where the 411 comes in. So one of the things that I am going to, once we go through this example, your job, right, your mission, if you choose to accept it, is to take your business plan that you've been working on and you're going to build out your GPS, right? An example of this, again, it will be in your open source. If you're on the call or you're listening to this recording later and you don't know what I'm talking about with the open source, it's in your hub. If you click on open source, you'll have the link to this. And then if there's questions, message me, that type of thing, okay? So let's look at the actual GPS. Now let's see. Nope, okay. Give me 1 second. We're gonna share, we're gonna just do a different screen share. These are always fun for me to remember. Yay. Okay, where I put what? There we go. Okay. Perfect. Okay. Now again, and I'm going to show y'all in just 1 second where you can find this example, and I actually have created it in, I'm going to share with y'all like a GPS example and then how that comes into a 411. And we'll dive into the 411 more later, but this is your GPS. So if we looked at this and we said, okay, you have your numbers nailed down, because guess what? You did that in your business plan. We're going to identify the goal, the 3 priorities, and the 5 strategies for each priority. Now, keep in mind, we talk about 5 strategies. It could be 3, it could be 6. I will tell you, if it's less than 3, you probably didn't name a priority. You probably named a strategy, right? If you don't, and then if you have more than 6, that's probably a whole nother priority, if that makes sense. Like you haven't broken it down enough or enough or less, depending on which way you need to go. So the rule of the GPS, it has to fit on a single piece of paper. Your real estate business members will use the same format and share it with people, or it won't happen. So, and it should say, if there was a number 5, break this down to your 411. So when we look at that, you have your GPS at the end of every month, you're going to be asking yourself for the next month. Okay, based on my year, what do I need to do this month? Based on, right? You always go back to your GPS. So the example is, I will close 50 amounts of home equaling whatever the volume that you want. This is an example of a goal, right? Let's say that would be, I'm making these numbers up, 50 million in volume equaling 300,000 in GCI. I am going to, because we're looking at profit first. What is the profit? Because I don't care, like your GCIs, like literally in a town of 100 and like our average price point was 180,000. I had a GCI of $500,000, 162 units to get there. And my profit sucked, okay? Like bad. Because we didn't understand, right? So start with profit. So I'm going to ask that part of your goal that you have profit, so that we're really focused on that this year. And then you go, okay, buyer transactions closed, sellers closed, be do have. Think about, who do I need to, in order to get to different results, you have to behave differently, be in business with talent, do things differently, have different tools, have more knowledge, skills, etc. So this is an example of a GPS, okay? You're going to have one that you can do on your own. So I'm going to Oh, so this is the other thing. So I'll share with this. So let's say that your buyer close decided, let's say that it was 25, which is, so you'd have 25 units to close. Again, you've got these numbers on your business plan. And then let's say that it is 50, that's 50% of your business. You also could say right here, so this is, you could break this down to the volume, right? Also, and the 150,000 GCI. Basically, what you're saying is that department of my business, which you might lead if you're a single agent, or you might have a buyer's agent. So Anya, if you're listening to this, right? Anya would be, she's the buyer's agent on her team. This would be her responsibility. This would go on her 411, right? And then you go, okay, well, where am I going to get it? On your business plan, we looked at this. You go, okay, my intent is to have 10% for my sphere, which means, 15 closings from my sphere. And that's going to be a volume of, 20,000, whatever that is, right? This is how we started. So again, taking it from your GPS, putting it in here, making sure that we're focused on what are the top levers, right? What are those top levers that are going to get us there? Okay. So now I'm going to show you guys one other piece. And again, I will share this with you. And we're going to have time to make sure that we stop and ask questions, because I want to make sure for some of you guys, this may be the first time you're doing it, or it may not be the first time, and yet you're, maybe you've done it in the past. You put it on your bookcase, you never looked at it again. If you have questions while I'm pulling this up, feel free to drop those in the chat, or unmute yourself and ask. All right, so again, you will get a link to this in your open source. And one thing that I will ask is make sure that you copy it. You know what? You won't have to do that, because we're going to put it in everybody's individual. Scratch that. Don't worry about that. Just know that it is going to be in your open source. It may not be there until Monday. So just be aware of that. And yet this is what this is going to look like. So you got your one-page business plan. You're going to take that and you're going to fill this out. You can literally type your numbers over this, or you might decide that you want your goal to be different. And what I mean by different, as long as it is measurable and specific and it points you in the north direction, this is just the example, right? You have this, so you can just type right over it, because from here, we're going to take this and we're going to say, so I want you kind of give an example of this. So let's say that, your strategy 4 is a kick-ass 36 touch that ensures I close. So in this, if we use this as an example, we want to have 20 buyers from our sphere and 20 closings from our sphere. So we needed to close 40 transactions. Okay. Now this is how we take it from our GPS to our actual daily action plan. So we take it from here. So for instance, and I'm just going to use this as a one example, and I'm going to say, okay, kick-ass 36 touch. We know that's what I want next year. So let's go to my 411. And again, we're going to go deeper into the 411. I just kind of want to show you how this connects and why that GPS is so important. is so that we can be appropriate in the moment. And so if it's going to be, so run a 36 touch plan, that's my goal next year. That ensures that I close 40 units. Well, then I want to go, this is 2021, right? And yet right now we are operating in 2021, right? Because it's a 90-day cycle in our business. So in December, I'm going to break down my goals. And again, this is just an example. And I'm going to say that I want to create a 36 touch plan for 2021. Well, if I'm going to do that in December, that helps me know what must I do in the first week of December to move me closer to having that done in December, right? Because that's one of those things. We go back to the 7 habits of highly effective people. Creating that GPS is not, I mean, the 36 touch is not urgent. It's important, but it's not urgent. So we put it off, and we don't get the results that we desire to have. So I'm going to show you one other thing of why. So the GPS is the overall. And then you might ask yourself, well, okay, but if I'm going to do a 36 touch, what do I do from here? So again, these are just examples because you're going to be able to make it yours, but I want you to almost think of it, and you might decide to do this in a book, and it doesn't matter. I'm doing it in Google Drive because it's easier to share with you guys, right? So if you look at, say that you're like, okay, I want to have an amazing database touch system. What does that mean? Well, now you're going to create an action plan on that thing. So this is an example again. So what is my 36 touch going to look like? Make the action plan so simple that whenever you bring somebody else in, this becomes your training manual in essence, right? And you go, okay, what is a 36 touch? And it goes that you can come back in and read this, but your MET should be on a 36 touch. What is the MET? How have you defined that for your business? It means you have permission. Well, what if I don't have permission to contact them? Well, get it. Here's a quick little example of how to get it. You might rewrite this because this might not be your example, right? What kind of things should I send? General ideas. So what's the, and then you're going to contact them 4 times a year. You need to know how many people in your database, so you know how many calls per month, per week, per day. On your business plan, we've already determined how many people we need to add to your database. Do 2 client events a year. So these are some examples of client events, and even 4 promotions per year. Again, you're going to have access to all of this, right? So I know I'm running through it fast, but you're going to have access to all of this. This is the important piece. And I think sometimes what we don't do, because we're trying to do everything right now, is you want to then go, okay, well, if that's my database, this is an example of from Viral Marketing. They are actually the ones that run my database. That's an example of what they do, because you might choose to do it. You might choose to farm it out, or you might choose for your admin to help you do it. That's all fine. There's also a video I put in here for a life of a lead. If you're not really clear on, okay, I got a lead, what happens to that from them becoming a lead all the way, that's a great video to watch. Okay, well, I've got a new contact. What's my plan? Well, so this is a step-by-step plan of what to do when you have a new person come into your sphere. That could be a past coworkers, friends, business associates. It could be a web lead. A web lead came in. They're a lead. They're not a contact. I've talked to them. We've made a connection. Now I want to add them as my MET, right? So how do I do that? Well, this talks about why is database important, all this. Then you go, you got the introductory, we put them on a smart plan. We're going to send an introductory email and text, a handwritten note, a card follow-up, neighborhood snapshot, right? And you can set this up in your database to remind you to do this, but you've got to know what you want to put in, right? Now, the cool part in here, it even gives you, like what script do you want to use? There's an introductory email. It's pre-built, right? Handwritten note. What do you want that card to say? My favorite, how to refer me email. Wouldn't that be really cool if everybody got that when they entered into your database? So you've got a call and a smart, what am I going to say on that call? What are the, if I get their voicemail, what are the things that I'm going to say? Introductory email and text, handwritten note, call follow-up text. Hey, Jenny, it's Olivia. I just wanted to confirm you got my note card. Make sure you get that. Yeah, fantastic. Would it be okay if I did something very simple? Sure. I'd like to set you up on a monthly neighborhood snapshot. That way you can see what home, right? You guys are getting this. And I know, again, I'm going fast because you'll have access to all this. Got a pre-built email so that the system automatically sends that out. I am going to pause here. How to refer me email. Hey, George, I'd like the opportunity to be a professional resource to the people in your life, and I'd love to earn their trust and confidence as well. When you're going to refer me to the people you care about most, it's important you know that you're going to be taken care of. It's important to me. I let everyone know what my intentions are when they send me a referral. The best way to refer someone, most effective, our process for referrals. Thanks, agent name. Now, you might love this or you may hate this. Doesn't matter. If you don't have it, use this as a base to create your own, right? Or go, you know what? I don't have anything, so I'm going to rip off and duplicate and do it exactly like this. And then I can come back and make adjustments, right? So, now, if I go back here, so then you go, okay, do I have a action plan for when I have new Facebook leads? Do I have one for once they become an old Facebook lead? Do I have my holiday? Okay, so, sorry, I get a little passionate and I'm also already a loud talker, so I'm not screaming at you guys. I'm just so excited about it. And we're going to talk about, and I talked about some of you guys, or some of you have seen this before, that mind share. So if the 36 touch, it says these are things that I'm going to do, you might go, okay, well, if I'm going to do 2 events this year for my Mets, let's pre-plan them. I'm going to do it in March, and this is what I'm going to do for the event, and this is the promotion, right? You talked about the promotions in there. You can go ahead and pre-plan it so that you don't have to think about it every month, because you go, okay, that's what I'm going to do. Now I'm going to put it in my database. Now I'm going to da-da-da. So I've thrown a lot at you guys. I've been talking for a long time. I'm going to pause, answer any questions you have about the GPS, and then see if that makes sense on how do you take your GPS and go, okay, do I have an action plan for my business in that thing? And why it's best if we focus on one piece than trying to put everything in place, right? If we put on the 36 touch in place in December, spend a lot of time on that. We get it in place so we can start every month. We're doing that. We're holding it accountable. Then we go, okay, if it's open houses, okay, now I'm going to do the same thing with my open house. And I'd have another tab or page in my book for this is what we do, our action plan for open houses. So we got 1 minute. I'll be on here longer if y'all need more time. And talk with me. What did you learn? Did I confuse the hell out of you? What are you getting? And I know I owe some money for KW Care, so I just said hell. So now it's twice. So I'll pay. So what are you guys getting?
Have a system.
What? Have a system.
Have a system. It works. And I think we tend to always want to do so much all the time that just chill out a little bit and sit down, focus, and then what I call it, the fruit, the harvest will come a little bit later, even though maybe we don't think that it will, but have the system in place so you can generate faster and be more organized.
Yeah, because it's one of those, we take a step back, like we, take a step back so that we set up success. Absolutely. I love that. And then it's being very, right, very intentional about what's the plan. Okay, now how do I execute that plan? And that's where we, as your coach, that's my job, is to help you put the plan together and yet execute it, so that we're going to be looking at this and going, all right, what'd you do? You said you're going to do this with your action plan with your database. Did you do it? Well, the challenge, if it's not clear on exactly what it is we're supposed to do, we say, yeah, I think I did it. Well, did you? Right. Like, so yeah. So thank you for that. Yeah. And Anya, yes, this is not currently in your hub. It absolutely will be. And yes, it will be under open sources in your hub. That's going to be the blank one. And then once you, and yet we're going to put a blank one in your hub. My intent though is to put an individual one of each of these in your like in your hub, so that when you click on it, right, that's all yours and that all your changes, and I can see them and you can see them. But if you get into the hub and start doing it before, just make a copy, add your name, make adjustments, and then we can pull that back into your hub. So we both have, we're both looking at that. So yeah, Anya, it absolutely will be. All right, who else?
I always have questions about the difference between priorities and strategies, and that may be an individual coaching thing. That's always when I do my GPS.
Well, now it's actually it's a great question, because it's a challenge to know, especially at the beginning, what's the priority versus what's the strategy. The big piece I would say when you're going through, you might just choose to use these as your priorities at first, because you're looking at different pieces of the business. But if whatever you say can be, this is why it's so hard, because it's hard to articulate. If whatever you say that your priority is, if it's only got one strategy with it, that's probably a strategy, not a priority. Priorities are bigger. It's because you think about it's complex. So again, so if I look at, as an example, buyer transaction, that's a complex thing. There's going to have multiple steps with it. So I know that's a priority. Saying, calling for sell by owners, that's doing one thing. Now there's some steps, right? There's an action plan to do that, but it's just one thing.
Yeah, because I think I want to make lead gen levers priorities, or like 36 touch versus open houses. You know, open house would be more a strategy, but however, 36 touch could be a whole priority depending on how I guess it's crafted.
Yeah, it could be. And a lot of times, then you also think about, so like a 36 touch, it's a system. So to me, that's going to be a strategy to get you to the closings that you want. And then it's going to have a system, right? Which is kind of like the action plan of that system.
Because I always say, why isn't just leads, leverage, and listings? Those are just always the three priorities.
Yeah, well, no, absolutely. So that's actually, if you go to some people's GPSs, that's exactly how they do it, because it makes sense and it's what we're taught from the one thing. So you literally could, your priority one could be leads. How many leads do I need? What are the strategies to get to those leads? Priority two could be listings. What are the things I need to do that? And then priority three is leverage. What's the leverage that I need to make these things work? Absolutely. Those are priorities. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. Anybody else? Questions, thoughts? You know, I'm not afraid of just calling on you. You can even chat them in the chat box. Let me hear, like, let's one takeaway, put it in the chat box, or one question, thought, concern. Let's do takeaways and then we'll wrap. See, if y'all were in a live class right now, I would really be putting you on the spot.
You want it spoken or you want it in the chat?
Either way, either way.
I just like the clarity that comes from, like you said, translating the GPS and the 411 and knowing what really is my first priority.
Hmm.
And what else is distractions? And how to craft the time logging around it.
Yeah, yeah, love it. Perfect. Yes, and then Emma added priority versus distraction. All right, let's get one more and then we'll wrap.
I would say for me that you have all these ideas in your head and seeing all of this, it makes everything not so overwhelming because you just take a task, you take each step at a time and break it down and you put it in black and white and then focusing in.
Yes, that right there is the key, right? We get all of it in our head on somewhere and then going based on that, which one's the most important thing that I do right now. Love it. Because again, this is the cool part. So you got this, then we go, okay, based on that, what do I need to do this month? And if you end up having more than 3 or 4 6 max for things that you need to do this month, that's a priority. There's too many. You're not going to get them done. So scale it back, right? Kind of go back to the domino. What's the one thing? What's the first domino that needs to happen and knock all those other dominoes? Okay, that's the one, right? And then from there, pulling out your planner and saying, well, if I'm going to spend time this week on my database, well, got to have it in my planner. So where's that 90 minutes, 4 hours, whatever time that I'm actually going to work on that? So yeah. All right. I trust that this was, value. It is recorded. We will get this uploaded in YouTube. We will get these pieces into that open source. Angie, we'll get that. You don't have that yet, but we'll email you a hub and open source and all of that type of thing.
Okay.
All right. And then if you guys need me, you got my number. Call me, text me, email me. Otherwise, have an amazing, amazing rest of the weekend. Go do something fun.
Sounds
Least
good.
something
Thank
fun.
you.
All right. Thanks.
You
Have a good-
too.
Bye.
Bye.